Hello everyone. I hope that you are doing so well today, wherever this video may find you. So I just finished up my morning meditation and I'm really kind of settling into the beginning of my day. And I wanted to sit down and make this video. And I've kind of been feeling like I want to talk about the idea of fear, but I also want to talk a little bit about my own story. I'm not going to go too much into it because I feel like over time my story really will come out through these videos, but just a little bit of it woven into this idea of fear. And so I grew up in a family of 8, and there were 6 kids and my parents. And my mom was the sole provider for the family for most of, well, really I think for most of my life. And she was an elementary school teacher. And so I grew up in a trailer park, in a medium-sized town. It's grown over time. But I grew up in a family where there was not enough, right? Where we always had this idea of lack, where we always had this mentality of there wasn't enough money, there wasn't enough resources, there wasn't enough to go around. We had to save that. We had to, or we couldn't go do that thing because we didn't have the funds for it. And I grew up with that mentality, right? And I also grew up where I was raised as a Baha'i, so I grew up in a Baha'i home, and I grew up with this one aspect of me teaching me about peace and love and harmony and spirituality. And then there was this other side of me in my home life where my dad was working through and dealing with some of his own mental health issues, that he didn't always have the best tools to be a parent. And so he would say or do things that didn't always, weren't always maybe the best for kids. And it also kind of trained me to think a certain way and to believe things about the life in a certain way. And I started to be very confused with life as I grew up, because here was this really beautiful message I was getting from being raised as a Baha'i, and then there was other things I was seeing in my home life that didn't quite fit with what I thought the world was supposed to be. I was getting mixed messages. And then especially even being taught at home by my family, when somebody, like, we were always taught to treat people with love and kindness. And so when if someone was hurt or somebody, needed help, you would help them. But even more, if somebody hurt you or said something mean or negative to you, then you were to return and give them roses. I mean, that's metaphorical, right? But you were to do something kind for them, or not judge them in your heart, and for a long time that was really hard for me to accept or understand. And I think over time I've come to get that a little bit in a deeper way, and we can talk about that later. But so I grew up in that home, and for various other things and various, life experiences that happened there, I ended up dropping out of high school at 16, moving in with my brothers in a home. I only lived with them for about 6 months, and then I went off on my own. And I kind of just went through this wild stage of my life where I was trying to figure out who I was, and find my path, find my way as a kid who was dealing with a lot of trauma and pain and fear. I mean, fear was driving the show for a long time in my life. And then, I kind of went off on that path. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter when I was 17. Beautiful blessing, and I'm so grateful for her. So I got pregnant with her when I was 17, but I, found out the day after my 18th birthday, and had her when I was 18. And then about a year later, a little bit over, or a little bit less, I found out that I was pregnant with my son. And I ended up, so I was sitting there pregnant with my son, going, what am I going to do? I was working in a, boys rehabilitation center, so like a juvenile center. I was working in the kitchen. I was a kitchen lady, and I was kind of seeing that as my path. I was going to be a kitchen lady, and I was going to work in institutions and things. And I ended up deciding I didn't want to do that. I was on that path. I was going through the trainings. I was doing all the things, and I just decided I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to go back to school. And so I ended up going to school for an associate's in psychology, and then I went and I decided I was going to go the full way for psychology, and then just decided that was not quite it. So I ended up in physics, and so I got a bachelor's of science in physics and a master's of mathematics. And became really passionate about being in touch with the community and working with kids and working with youth and teachers and people and getting them real excited about science and having fun and so I did that for a while. But all along the way, especially when I went into my physics degree from my psychology degree, I've had this idea of like imposter syndrome. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't a physicist. I had grown up an artist. I was a high school dropout. I was not a science-minded individual. But over time I kind of I played that like fake it till you make it, and eventually I said, oh, I finally made it. I was there on graduation day. I'm like, I finally made it. I made it all along. We don't have to fake anything. We are where we're supposed to be. But anyway, it was fear. I was just so afraid. I was so afraid of again, what if I fail? What are people gonna think? And just lots of fear. And so when I finished my bachelor's degree, I didn't really know what to do, and I kind of ended up going on this path through education because I loved inspiring and uplifting people, and I've always been a teacher. I was born a teacher. My mom was a teacher. It's just part of our lineage. But after I finished my degree, I decided I was going to go into teaching, and so I did that. I taught for a little while at a high school, and then I ended up doing some outreach for AmeriCorps, and then life kind of just kept spiraling, and I ended up getting a master's in education, and now here I am working on a PhD in education. Well, I've taken a momentary break from my PhD, so I'm taking a step back so I can reorient and recalibrate. But that's kind of where this idea of fear comes in, is that I feel like I've been, fear comes in everywhere, but this is part of why I want to talk about it. I feel like I've been climbing this ladder for so long of like, oh, these are the things you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. This is how the world is supposed to see you. And I've been climbing this ladder, and I'm getting further and further up the ladder, and I'm feeling like, oh wait, I'm on the wrong ladder, or I'm on the wrong road, or this ladder's in the wrong place. I feel like I'm disconnected from the direction in which I'm going. And so I've been, trying things, dipping my toes in the water. Like I've made my website, Journey into the Soul. I've officially started it as a business, and so I'll be doing various things with that you'll hear about in the coming months. And I have this YouTube channel now, and these are all outlets for me and for my voice, and for me to really speak from my heart in the way that resonates with me about the things that I care about. And every time I want to sit down and make these videos, and fear comes in of what are people going to think, or I make a post on my website, and fear comes in of what are people going to say, because you're talking about spiritual things. You're talking about things that are not conventional. Maybe even I'm going to be talking about things that don't fit into your, Newtonian physics world, right? And so I have a lot of these fears coming up of like who I'm supposed to be because of what the world thinks I'm supposed to be. And I know that I'm not the only one, right? And of course I'm not. We all have those fears. And so I'm making this video today to remind everyone that these fears show us the direction we're going in, right? They remind us that we are disconnecting from love. They remind us that we are separating from what we know is really true, right? And so when we feel that fear, it's important to feel it and let it move through us. And then, experience and the life as it is, and really do our best to try to shift our perspective from that fear-based story to a love-based story. Because instead of thinking like, oh, what are people going to think, I'm choosing to believe, oh, how many people can I inspire? How many people can I uplift? How many people can I help today? I'm here for the greater good. I'm here for service. So show me how I can serve. That's how I feel. And show me where I am needed. Show me what I should do so that I can help those around me. And that's really, I feel like, what can shift the story is when you start to change the way that you're thinking about something, when you change the way that you're speaking to yourself in your head about something. I mean, oftentimes the stories that we tell us in our head are just that. They're stories that they buy. I'll talk about this at another time, my beliefs in, we are what we think and we get what we think about. But a lot of the time we're saying things in our head that aren't even true, or they're more our own fear-based stories about what other people are thinking, right, or saying. And of course, sometimes they are true. There's important to name that also. Sometimes the things we're thinking are very true, and they're scary, or they hurt, or they're painful. But the greatest thing about being human and being in a position of challenge is that while maybe we cannot control what's going on around us or that particular circumstance, we can always control how we react to it. And so maybe that means we have to take a step back and take a few deeper breaths than we would normally, and breathe into our heart and reconnect with who we really are before we can further engage with those people or further interact in that situation, Yeah, and I just think that it's just a reminder to use the fear to show you where you're at, and then use those moments where you're in that to work on shifting your perspective. And it won't always be easy, but it'll always be worth it. And for me, every time I have been willing to work through that fear, it's always resulted in some form of liberation. And all the things that I've gone through in my life just don't seem to impact me the same way. And even though I started this video kind of talking about some of the stuff, like very little of like growing up in a big family where my dad had his struggles, he was really just doing the best that he could with the tools that he had been given. And I was still so very blessed to be raised in that Baha'i household where there was a lot of love and there was a lot of spirituality, and it really did help bring me home to who I am. And it really helped me to accept who I am, and that's one thing that I am so grateful to my parents for, was them always encouraging me to be myself, which has really helped in those moments of intense fear to work through it and to kind of overcome it. And throughout this whole journey that I've been on, and I continue to be on every single day, I know that, fear will come up and it will arise, but I'm willing to take the steps to work through it and to feel better in a moment and to shift my perspective to love. And so with that, I think I would like to just end this video. And I really appreciate your time today, just taking to listen to me speak. And if you liked the video or if something I said resonated with you, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. I'll hopefully be putting out a new video every Sunday or Monday of the week. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comment box below, and that'll kind of help create a dialogue between me and you. Feel free to voice however you feel as well. I think it's really important to have that dialogue and that diversity of opinions and thoughts. And I look forward to the next time. Have a lovely day wherever you might be. Namaste, my friend.